And Obama versus Trump. What's going on? We've got Tulsi Gabbard on to explain what's happened, the interesting files that have been released, and all of the implications of that. It should be very interesting. Lots of people are calling. They arrested Trump. They arrested Trump. They threw him in. Well, they did a mugshot, right? So are we going to get an Obama mugshot? I have no idea, but it seems like maybe, right? So we'll talk about that later on in the show. Weird propaganda being published by CTV about forgetting kids in cars. Anybody could do it, they say, which nope. If you've got kids, that's not true at all whatsoever. There are very concerning and weird things being published trying to normalize odd behavior, and you don't just forget your kids in the car. That's not something that happens. That's definitely not true. We've got a grab bag of invasion stuff to talk about because it's happening across a lot of the Western world, and people are upset about things that are going on. People are taking lots of footage and talking about it in ways they haven't talked about it before. So I think that that's interesting enough to focus on. But the big story for today is Tamara Lich is heading to Ottawa to be sentenced for mischief. And in the longest mischief trial, she says, in Canadian history, and she's not wrong. And there's a whole bunch wrong with what's going on, considering there are violent criminals who are not getting any jail time. There are pedophiles who are not getting any jail time. There are people who are trying to buy girlfriend experiences from 15-year-olds, and their immigration status is the top priority rather than the, quote, rule of law in Canada, while at the same time, Tamara Lich and Chris Barber are being politically targeted for doing something that's perfectly legal, having a peaceful protest in Ottawa against bad policies, and they're having the book thrown at them, or it seems like they're about to have the book thrown at them. I hope I'm wrong about that, but I've been saying it for years, and I thought that having a different prime minister, even though that Carney is de facto Trudeau, it's the same thing. He's a figurehead, and he represents the same policies that Trudeau represented. So it's not really different, but I thought maybe having a different figurehead in there, they would cool it on trying to bring the state hammer down on Lich and Barber. And it seems that was misplaced optimism, I guess. I hope I'm wrong, but it seems, and I mean, the sentencing hasn't happened yet. So this is just what the Crown wants. And I think it's far too far. So there's lots to get to. Let's get to it first. Tamara Lich says, we learned last evening that the Crown has submitted their materials to our legal team for our upcoming sentencing hearing. They are seeking a 7-year prison sentence for Tamara and 8 years for Chris Barber. I haven't seen their documents yet, but hopefully I'll receive them today and can provide more details. With that, we are eastbound and headed for Ottawa. So there you go. She's on her way to sentencing. And what a twist and turn. 7 years, right? Donald Best says, Anarcho-tyranny, when the state crushes law-abiding and shields the lawless. And yeah, just to give you the Wikipedia, whatever definition, anarcho-tyranny is a system of government that fails to enforce or adjudicate protection to its citizens, so allows crime to happen to its citizens and doesn't prosecute the criminals at all, while at the same time simultaneously persecuting innocent conduct. So how dare you tell us that you don't like these policies we're enacting? We're going to enact them anyway, and we'll throw you in jail. So Donald accurately describes what anarcho-tyranny is, and he says, in honor of Tamara Lich and Chris Barber facing 9 and 7 years prison for peaceful protest against mandatory experimental injections that have now proven so deadly. You're taxed, tracked, disarmed, and arrested for defending your family, while violent thugs run wild, commit daily crimes, and walk free without consequence. A peaceful protest or a single online post earns years in prison, while pedophiles and gang shooters are handed probation to protect from deportation. This isn't a mistake, it's a plan. Coined in the 1990s by political theorist Samuel T. Francis, anarcho-tyranny describes a regime that enforces laws selectively, harsh towards peaceful citizens, permissive towards criminals. Francis warned that modern states increasingly fear their own people more than actual predators. The result, you're fined, fired, or imprisoned for misgendering someone or defending your home. They get a slap on the wrist for arson, assault, or theft. You're censored and tracked. They're excused, radicalized, and funded by government agencies and NGOs, which NGOs are funded by government, which is interesting to note. In short, law-abiding citizens are targeted while violent actors are given room to operate. especially when their violence destabilizes tradition, culture, or national identity. Francis clearly saw this in the late 20th century. Soaring urban crime met with citizen disarmament, lenient sentencing for predators, and legal regime obsessed with equality instead of order. The goal: undermines civil society while expanding the administrative state. Sound familiar? Police stand down during riots but arrest you for a tweet. Courts ignore gang violence but prosecute farmers, pastors, and parents. Borders stay open to invaders but peaceful protest against mass immigration is criminalized. This is about consolidating power through engineered disorder. We must recognize the anarcho-tyranny is already here and act to dismantle it before the collapse becomes irreversible. Restore rule of law, because that's not what we have right now. We have I think accurately, an anarcho-tyranny. Restore real order, restore a justice system that serves citizens, not the regime. I think the only way to do that is to remove all the judges, remove all of the lawyers, probably too, remove everybody from the system, and have citizen-led tribunals. Five people, 7 people, always different people, never the same people, right? You get your name in a hat, and you don't, I think everybody who is a voter or something like that gets their name in a hat and you get pulled. And if there's a case to decide, then you have to go do that with these 5 people or whatever. And I think that would go a long way, because if you can't bribe the judge because there's 5 of them and they're always changing, that creates a difficulty in bribing the judge, right? So in order to restore actual law and order, we have citizens of the place where you are decide these cases rather than an out-of-touch judge who may have conflict of interest undeclared, right? Just like our prime minister, up until recently, I guess. Andy Lee says, totally not politically motivated at all. She's responding to Tamara Lich, and she says, she's got an old tweet of hers. She says, so the Crown Attorney trying the case against the Freedom Convoy organizers, Moise Karmiji? Sorry. Some people just tune in to watch me attempt to say names, which I can appreciate. Okay. They also, this guy, who's the lawyer, the Crown Attorney against the Freedom Convoy, he attended fundraisers for Justin Trudeau and is a Liberal Party donor. We're in deeper trouble than I've imagined. Our judicial system is completely compromised. Oh yeah. If only we knew how bad it really is. Like, it's so much worse than that. It's so much worse than that. Orders of magnitude worse than that. And I wish that weren't so, because people still believe the fantasy of we live in Canada circa 1999 and our laws will protect us, because it doesn't seem like our laws will protect us at this point in time. And I hope I'm wrong about that. But it doesn't seem like I'm wrong about that. Lisa says, she's responding to Tamara Lich as well. She says, what is a reasonably observant Canadian supposed to conclude, except that protests coded far right or right wing will be prosecuted to the nth degree, while others get a pass? This risks a black eye to the administration of justice. A black eye? Oh my gosh. It's well past that. We're at the point now where it's so blatant that people are beginning to notice, and they don't like people who notice anything. Okay. And so we're in a situation now that people are noticing, and they're doubling and tripling down. They're saying, actually, if you notice too hard, we're going to put you in jail as well, right? Straight to jail. Overcooked fish, undercooked chicken, right? Straight to jail. You're done. And so it seems there are a lot of people saying, so if I stand up and say, you can't come into my house because you don't live here and I'm worried for my family, I'm going to get arrested. But this guy's going to get a trip back to his 5-star luxury hotel. How does that work? But that's what's happening in the UK. So should we be surprised? I'm just surprised that it's taken this long for most people to pry their eyes open. Here's Ryan Garrettson. He's responding to Tamara Lich as well. He says, in Canada, a guy who smoked some weed and then stabbed 2 women in their head and neck staying at his Airbnb get no jail time. Or a guy gets caught trying to pay for sex with a 15-year-old but is spared jail to help with his immigration to Canada. But Tamara and Chris are looking at 7 to 8 years on a mischief charge that has been going on in courts for years now. Something is very wrong in Canada. It's trumped up charges, and they've been trying to get this through. And it seems like the judge is trying to slow walk this. Like, it seemed like the judge had some kind of hand in, let's do this after Justin Trudeau leaves office, because I don't know what stopped them from doing this last March. Right? But they didn't. And then we had stalled everything until Carney came in. And now, well, It's no different, really. Alex Zoltan's responding to Tamara Litch. He says, a friendly reminder that 2 non-citizens were given 3 years each for dragging a man to death under their Ford Mustang. So murder, bad. Mischief, way worse. How dare you? How dare you, madam? So that's the Canadian justice system on display, right? This is us, everybody. City News Toronto says a man convicted in the 2005 Boxing Day shooting of 15-year-old Jane Kriba was granted full parole in January despite a parole board report that said he had a 76% chance of reoffending. 76%. A few minutes later, he is now facing a murder charge in Montreal. So Jane Kriba was bad enough. I remember that happening. 2005, I was kind of just out of high school. So 15 years old wasn't that far away from me age-wise then. And I thought, oh my gosh, like that's terrible. And I think she was just standing outside of the Eaton Center and it was bad, like wrong place, wrong time. I don't think she was targeted because of who she was or anything like that. And so awful. Like that struck me. They let that guy out and now he killed somebody else. Holy smoke. Despite knowing that he'd probably kill somebody else, like 76% chance is like, it's not a small chance of reoffending, right? This is our justice system. We're trusting our lives to this system. Why? Why do we do that? Queen Paula says, is retweeting Toronto police from yesterday, news release, rideshare driver arrested in sexual assault investigation, Weston Road and Eglinton Ave West area. Women and girls are no longer safe in Ontario, says Paula. 2 female victims ordered a rideshare, and the rideshare driver followed the victims into a nearby lobby and sexually assaulted both victims and left the area in his vehicle. And they gave his name, Mohammed Abdumalik Babikar, 30, was charged, and he's out on bail. Right? So it doesn't say he's out on bail. I'm just implying, or I'm just filling in the rest of the story because that's probably what happened. Who knows? We'll see. I'll have to look into it. Lewis is responding to GB politics. Channel migrant who sexually assaulted a teenage girl with special needs has been jailed for 14 months. And Lucy Connolly got 2 years and 7 months for a deleted tweet. Okay? A man who is a non-citizen sexually assaulted a special needs girl, teenage girl, and was only jailed for half the time. Okay, right? This is not happening by accident. These are not mistakes that are happening, and it's not a mistake that it's happening in Canada and in other places too. Here are other people noticing what I'm noticing. This is a Canadian guy saying, hey, our justice system's kind of effed, eh?
Any Canadian that thinks our justice system hasn't been weaponized by the politicians, well, I don't know what glue you're sniffing. Chris Barbie sentenced in a week, and they want to go put him in jail for 2 years and take away his truck, which he earns a living with. And meanwhile, in Ontario, a pedophile gets a conditional discharge because if we find him guilty of trying to meet a 15-year-old girl with $140 cash for you-know-what, then it might mess with his immigration status. It might make it harder for him to bring his wife over. Yeah, this is our political system. This is our justice system. Canada's broken. Shit show. So apparently in Canada, a charge of mischief is way worse than being a pedophile. Any Canadian that thinks our justice...
There you go. So other people are noticing this too. And I think that that's interesting as well, because there was a time where YouTube took me off air because I was noticing too much. Wiretap Media says, why is the Conservative Party silent? 2 Canadian protesters are facing 8 years in prison after the federal government broke the highest laws of the land and attempted to unleash the military on Canadian protesters, and the Conservative Party is silent. I don't hear them saying anything. Is Mr. Poilievre weighed in on this? Nope. Greg Wycliffe is weighing in on Tamara Litch as well. He says, if Pierre Poilievre and Danielle Smith don't talk about this, then please explain to me why they still deserve your support. Some people are saying, Kevin says they can't talk about active criminal court proceedings. This is a way to silence these people. I think that this is, if you have an injustice happening and you keep your mouth shut, that's not the right move, I think. Right? And it was the wrong move with Coots. It was the wrong move with Artur Pawlowski. It's the wrong move with Tamara Litch and Chris Barber. And I think it's inexcusable. And maybe people think that this is enough of an excuse. I don't think that rises to I don't think that rises to it. Mr. Sunshine Baby says without the trucker convoy, this kind of surprised me because he was a conservative acolyte during the election. He was one of those people who, if you pointed out problems with the conservative whatever or anything, if you tried to have a conversation with him, he would get upset if it went the wrong way, if that makes sense. If you talked about PPC or something like that, right, it would bring out more attacks than not. But I was surprised by this take. Without the trucker convoy, says Mr. Sunshine Baby, the Conservative Party was nothing. A bunch of losers who never accomplished anything. The convoy gave them a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity to win, to beat Trudeau. Canadians were so angry with Trudeau, we needed someone to give us hope. The trucker convoy was the singular event that propelled the CPC into winning territory. It removed the leader, and Poilievre was put in place as leader, but then they never did anything with that, other than putting Pierre Poilievre in place and getting good polling numbers 6 months before the election, 5 months before the election. The CPC did an okay job of using the momentum of F. Trudeau to gain popularity, but they obviously dropped the ball in the final quarter. It's a big mistake for the party to stay silent on the political prosecution of Tamara Lich and Chris Barber. And Chatterbox Muse says, you whine so much. No, that's not the one I wanted to highlight. There are some people who are talking about this one. Tristan, he says the CPC barely went out to the convoy, but Maxime Bernier did and the PPC did. They were the only federal party and leader to go. CPC and the LPC are nothing but a giant uniparty. Yeah, I don't think that the Conservatives really supported the convoy, but the support for the convoy rallied around the Conservatives. But again, I did not see the Conservatives. There was Candice Bergen, and she's left. Like, she's gone now. She was the interim leader before Poilievre got put in place. She went out and talked to people, and she seemed genuine, I guess. And Poilievre, to a degree, seemed genuine, but also like a shark, right? Like, he went out and marched with James Topp for 2 minutes, something like that. And he went out and talked to the convoy people because the new leader was going out and talking to the convoy people. So now that's acceptable. But then when he became leader, he kind of turned his back on the convoy, and he didn't say anything about the convoy. And during his leadership, and then even during the election, it seemed like, I don't think convoy was really crowning anything of the CPC. So, but it is interesting that they're being completely silent on this whole thing, and it's concerning. Here is Wiretap, and yeah, this is the same thing I already said. So we'll leave that there. And I think that it is very concerning that our justice system is are going after Tamara Lich and Chris Barber so hard when there are criminals and violent criminals and people who have done horrible things, violent things, and things that Chris Barber and Tamara Lich didn't do, and they're getting out, and Chris and Tamara are facing lots of time in jail, and I think that's inappropriate. So our country doesn't seem trustworthy to execute its responsibilities, and that's unfortunate. Here is a little bit of food news. UK food strategy, says Bernie. This new government strategy isn't at all worrying, and she's being sarcastic, and won't be voted on in Parliament, which means you won't get a say. The strategy repeatedly prioritizes climate goals above actual food production. So this is a government food strategy for England. So this is from the Department for Environmental, Food and Rural Affairs. And again, I think this extrapolates. This is 2030 agenda. This is, we have to let things go wild and you can just pay more for your food. And oops, we don't have enough food. Sorry about that. I guess you'll starve because reasons for the climate and stuff. Anyway, back to this. The strategy repeatedly prioritizes climate goals above actual food production. Large sections advocate for land use change, i.e. taking farmland out of production to rewild or afforest it. What it's promoting is the quiet transformation of food policy into climate policy. Farmers are being nudged to exit food production, and the public is being conditioned to accept less and pay more and adjust their expectations. This entire document undermines domestic food output at a time when supply chains are fragile and global food inflation is high. Our food strategy now doesn't start with how do we feed the nation? It starts with how do we meet net zero? I've read it, so you don't have to. So there's a whole thread that she goes through. But again, I think just the 30,000 foot look at this shows that they're all in lockstep, and they're moving forward, and they're doing it for your safety, comrade, and it's nonsense, and it is anything but for our safety. It is to our detriment. Absolutely. Let's talk about the invasion of the West ongoing, and Data Republican starts us off, and she says, ever wonder why European cities accepted so many refugees? Same reason Colbert was pushing vaccines, I think. U.S. aid funded. Today, I'm over my jet lag and processing the documents that she scanned this week. Already, it's pretty shocking. The refugee influx into Europe began as a U.S. taxpayer-funded subsidy. The U.S. government paid European cities to take them in, using Soros-backed operations like ARC, American Refugee Committee, as the middleman. Yes, ARC, co-founded with money from the Soros Humanitarian Fund, was running programs directly for the U.S. government. It goes even deeper and darker than that. Stay tuned. ARC handled all the logistics needs for IOM, including deciding refugee placements and schedules, at least at one point. Even today, there are plenty of financial incentives for European cities to take refugees. The following is a UN-backed initiative. Translation, US-backed. So money, 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 money. This is a lot of momentum, and momentum is money. Lots of money if you do this, right? Just do this, city, and you don't have to raise your taxes on your citizens. You could take a 9% tax increase down to a 3% tax increase, and your citizens will love you for it. And just don't tell them about the migrants. Right? Here is Stephen Miller, and he says the number of illegals in LA is far greater than anyone knows. Mayor Karen Bass says, let's be clear, immigrants are the backbone of Los Angeles. This is 20 hours ago. Targeting this community doesn't just tear families apart. It's a blow to our economy. This needs to end now. I've seen pictures and videos of the freeway in Los Angeles almost completely empty, whereas before it's widely known as one of the most busy freeways in the world. And so that's interesting. Here's the mayor saying it's an attack on our economy.
And this was on Father's Day. It was really sad. I went to East LA. I went to 3 different restaurants, kind of a block with restaurants clustered. No one was there.
Right.
And the owners were saying that, because I said, well, is this like COVID? They said, no, worse.
Really?
Because the workforce is not coming in. But you remember how a lot of restaurants survived through home delivery?
Yeah.
They said people aren't ordering.
Wow.
And people aren't ordering because they don't have the money and they're scared.
So not ordering, not going to, because they're afraid of raids.
Right. They're afraid.
Yeah.
Maybe they shouldn't live in a country illegally then, because then they wouldn't be afraid if they weren't illegally in the country. I have simple solutions. I mean, you want a solution. This is the easiest solution. Go back to a country where you're not illegal in, and then you won't be afraid. And you can go to restaurants. You could order take in, take out, whatever you want to call it. No problems whatsoever. Wild. Wild. These people will do mental gymnastics to justify everything and anything. Adam Brooks is talking about what's going on in the hotels in UK that are taxpayer funded. Apparently it's OnlyFans. He says, are you effing kidding me? News, UK News, asylum hotel sex film. 2 asylum seekers caught making OnlyFans film in hotel paid for by you in shocking abuse of the system. I'm shocked. They're making OnlyFans content on our dime. I think we've done worse, right? Like, honestly, the romp happened at the 18th century Metropole Hotel in Blackpool, which has housed hundreds of migrants since 2021. That's worse, right? Like, yes, making OnlyFans content is terrible and expensive, but it's a limited hangout. Like, it could be $50 million max, right? Like, not just for one, but like all told through the system. How much do the migrant hotels cost? Like, there's lots of ways. There's things to be outraged with, orders of magnitude. Yes, we should not be allowing people to make OnlyFans content on taxpayer dime, obviously. But holy cow, right? Like, everything is paid for by the UK taxpayer, not just the OnlyFans content. Absolutely everything. All their meals, they get wash and fold, they get security, private security, they get 4-star hotels. Like, sure, the OnlyFans is a problem, but everything about it is a problem. All of it's a problem, and orders of magnitude bigger than just the slice here, right? Like, sure, the slice here is salacious and it makes for a good headline, but the problem is the whole program. Everything about it is a problem. Okay. Here's Avery, and she says they came to the UK as migrants seeking asylum from their Sharia countries, and now they're calling for Sharia in the UK. This isn't migration; it's an invasion that we're paying for. Right? Here's this lady talking about this.
They migrated to the UK, leaving their Sharia law countries, seeking asylum, and now they are in the streets of the UK calling for Sharia in the UK.
I thought he was going to go into a Macarena style, right? Like dance or something like that. I don't know. Wild, right? So the UK brings them in to save them, and they say, thanks for saving us. Actually, we'd really rather you guys all be Muslim Sharia Muslims, please. So we're going to bring our Sharia law in here. Thumbs up. Thanks for saving us. Right? So what? Doesn't seem like they wanted saving from their Sharia law in their Muslim country. Doesn't seem like that. Ivor Cummins is is he Irish? I think he's Irish. And he says, from Facebook, a bill going through the dial right now, they're making it legal to seize your home in order to house migrants. Your attention is drawn to the phrase, all residents of Ireland. No mention is made of citizens. This is an extremely left policy driven by globalists. So part 2, it says, the state in particular recognize the common good as including the right to secure, affordable, dignified housing appropriate to need for all the residents of Ireland, and shall guarantee this right through its laws, policies, and prioritizations of resources. The state accordingly shall delimit the right to private property where it is necessary to ensure the common good and to vindicate the said right to housing for all residents of Ireland. All residents of Ireland, eh? Everybody here gets a house, and we might have to take your house to make that happen, okay? Absolutely wild. This is interesting. What if, would the First Nations people of Canada be okay if the population percentage of First Nations was smaller than a population of, say, the Indian from India percentages, right? Like, it seems like that's a wholesale replacement of an entire population. That's happened by a lot, almost double, actually. So you've got, I think it's 7%. Yeah. So, Canada says we now have more Indians from India in Canada than we have First Nation Indians. So isn't that weird? Indigenous population is 4.7% of Canada's population, 1.95 million, but the population of Indian ancestry from India is 7.7%, 3.19 million. Isn't that weird? Isn't that a strange thing to have happened? When did that happen? I wonder. I don't have the data on that, but I'm sure that it's only been in the last 10 years, and I wonder how quickly that happened. Absolutely wild, right? Here's a guy talking about this, and he says, the real Mr. Bench is sharing this. Want to know why so many places in Canada are using temporary foreign workers? It has to do with the changes the Trudeau government made over the years to the international mobility program. I'm worried that if we join the EU in any real way, international mobility is going to be a problem, because if you can get into the EU, then you can come into Canada too, right? So if the EU has open borders, then Canada has open borders. Right? Here's this guy.
Why is every Tim Hortons seemingly staffed with temporary foreign workers? Like, aren't there Canadians that need jobs too? Now, I don't think temporary foreign workers are a bad thing. I just am perplexed as to why every single Tim Hortons is staffed with them. Now, there is the temporary foreign worker program, where employers have to prove to the government through a labor market impact assessment that no Canadian is not only applying for the job, no Canadian is qualified for the job, forcing the employer to go outside of Canada. Typically, this was used in agriculture and construction. But over the years, the temporary foreign worker program has expanded to all types of different sectors, and something critical happened in 2014. In 2014, the government introduced the International Mobility Program, or IMP. It was tied to special work permits, post-grad permits, etc. But a key element of IMP is no labor market impact assessment is required. Employers no longer have to prove that Canadians were passed over for the job. By 2022, IMP permit holders ballooned to 472,000, more than triple the number of temporary foreign workers under the temporary foreign worker program. It got me thinking. We have more international mobility program permit holders than ever before. We have more temporary foreign workers than ever before. Employers don't need to show how Canadians were passed up on these jobs. So is Canada building this two-tier system where we have Canadians who are struggling to find jobs and trying to make their ends meet, but then we also have this cheap exploitative form of labor that's a pipeline that's growing dramatically year after year after year. What does this mean for our country and, as I've said before, social cohesion moving forward?
That it's being dismantled. That's what it means by the government's subsidies and use of monetary encouragements and punishments. It's not good. Peter Sweden says happening now, or it's happening. Greece is now getting tough on mass migration. A new draft law would mean that people who are in the country illegally will get sent to a minimum 3 years in prison if they don't leave voluntarily. This comes as they have stopped asylum applications from people from North Africa. So that's interesting. The invasion again is happening all across the Western world, and it's not good. Like, that's a bad thing. And how different countries deal with it is interesting, because up until Donald Trump came along, everybody said there is no way to deal with this, period. We can't do anything. And then Trump shut the U.S. southern border and said, immigration laws exist. What are you crazy people talking about? And all of a sudden, other places have decided to start doing similar things. Not Canada, just some other places, right? And some in fits and starts, like Greece saying, oh, just North African. Okay, but what about everywhere else, right? So we'll see how that all plays out. But again, I feel like sometimes they'll say, yes, we'll stop immigration. And people say, yay. And then all the yaying and cheering drowns out the part where they say from North Africa or from one place, right? Like from one place that represents 5% or something like that. Or maybe some place that represents 1%, right? So we get screwed because we refuse to hold our politicians to account, I think. Let's do our grab bag of governance. How long do we have on here? 31 minutes? 31 minutes. We'll do a couple of these and then I'll have to kill the stream. Andy Lee says Carney was Trudeau's financial advisor. He didn't inherit a mess. He created the mess. Globe and Mail says Carney inherited a fiscal mess from Trudeau and he is set to make it worse. And I agree with Andy Lee. Mark Carney is the problem, has been the problem, and will continue to be the problem until he's removed. And even if he is removed, I don't know that we'll get anything better, because it seems like the Uniparty is in complete control in Canada, and that's unfortunate. Bob says this mine layoffs, Ekati mine, are certainly unexpected and a sad day. After decades of anti-development liberal governments in Ottawa, another mine closes in the Northwest Territories, raising fears for how the Northwest Territories economy will pivot once they close and what it will mean for Indigenous governments as the mines provide revenue and jobs for many communities. So the mine closed in an unexpected way, and there's a little bit more color here on this. Here we go.
Everybody, it's Bob Zimmer in Yellowknife at what used to be Diamond Row, and this is the actual place where they cut diamonds from the Ekati mine. Well, in case you haven't heard, this is from CKLB Radio. Updated Ekati mine layoffs, certainly unexpected and a sad day, says Northwest Territories Industry Minister. What used to be a very busy diamond cutting row just beside the airport in Yellowknife, this was the last diamond cutting center that was actually working. There was vehicles here literally days ago, is now completely abandoned and empty. The Ekati mine is located in the Lac de Grasse region, approximately 300 kilometers northeast of Yellowknife, and has been in operation since 1998. In 2024, it employed 1,242 people, 700 direct employees, and 542 contractors. That's 1,242 jobs directly affected by the Ekati mine closing, and a total of 2,500 jobs affected by its closure indirectly. It's been devastating for the community and devastating for Northwest Territories. This is what happens after you have 10 years of an anti-development federal government under Justin Trudeau and now Mark Carney.
The headline highlighted said it was not an unfortunate accident. It was the intended consequences of the policies that have been enacted by this government. Absolutely true. We are being managed with bad policies on purpose. And I don't know what the outcome they're trying to drive is, but it sure isn't good governance and a peaceful, stable society. That's certainly not it. And with that, we've got to say goodbye to the stream. So thanks for watching, everybody, and we'll catch you tomorrow. And for everybody else, we will carry on. Peter says the city of Winnipeg will gladly spend your taxes on bike lanes. Oh, on bike lanes. I have to end the stream. Sorry. Bike lanes, public public art and land acknowledgements, and $1 million toilet. But if the city's snow graders damage your curb, you'll have to wait until 2045 because they do not have the resources. Huh. Weird. Right? Weird. And 2045 seems like a super long time. This has to be a typo. 311 tells Winnipeg homeowner to wait until 2045 for curb service. It's like, you damaged the curb. We're not waiting 20 years for that. Like, come and fix it. I was talking recently about Andrew Scheer standing up on stage and holding up a carton of milk and just drinking the 2-liter milk, and everybody clapping as if he did something meaningful, which he did. He signaled his bending the knee to the milk cartel, the dairy cartel, right? And so here's the food professor, and he says, finally, an op-ed by someone who actually understands supply management, written by Ryan Cardwell from the University of Manitoba, clearly explains why Canadians remain largely misinformed about the country's dairy regime. And I thought it was interesting. It's a good little piece. And here's just a bit of it. Supply management is a complex set of government policies that restrict production, marketing, and trade of dairy and poultry in Canada. At its core, supply management is a textbook cartel in which producers collude to fix production at the national level, set prices charged to processors who make the consumer food products sold in restaurants and grocery stores. Such collusion is illegal in other industries, food and elsewhere, but is mandated in supply management through government policies. Some market outcomes of those policies are high and stable incomes for producers, high consumer prices for dairy and poultry products, and smaller farms. Government supports for farms income is not new or unique to supply management. Field crop and other livestock producers in Canada receive generous government support as subsidized insurance, direct payments, and other programs, but the support provided to supply management producers differs in important ways. First, the level of support provided to supply management producers is much higher. The OECD estimates that supply management policies in Canada account for approximately 1/3 of gross farm receipts for supply management producers. This is multiples higher than support provided to field crops and other livestock producers. It's noteworthy, too, that recipients of this support are relatively high-income households. Average household income for dairy and poultry farms is more than double the average income for Canadian households who pay for the support through higher food prices. Approximately $245,000 for supply management farm families compared to the Canadian average of $116,000. Second, the source of funding for support to supply management producers comes from an implicit tax on food, not from government transfers. This has important implications. Support to other agricultural producers is funded from government revenues, much of which is raised through a progressive tax system and does not significantly affect food prices. And he goes through a couple of others. But I think that, it's a cartel, and the cartel is held up by the government, and there are important differences about this cartel and how other food producers are supported by the government. And I think that we have an opportunity to unwind this program because I don't think it's necessary anymore. But there's a lot of money behind keeping status quo, money that reaches right up to the current leader of the official opposition right now, right? Andrew Scheer is the current leader, while Pierre Poilievre is running. Well, he's the leader in the House of Commons, but I guess they're on break. But while the House of Commons was running, he was the one tapped. So until Poilievre takes back leadership after being elected, maybe then, right? It's all part of the same club, and we're not in it, right? But we have to buy their products. Ryan says, CTV News is reporting, anyone could forget a kid in a hot car, research shows. Nope, that's not true. Not at all. If you've got kids, you don't forget them in the car, generally, right? Generally. I think maybe there's been news reports of people who have done that, but I don't know, a little dubious, right? A little dubious. Here's National Post and Leslie Roberts, who's a long-in-the-tooth reporter for all sorts of state media in Canada. He says, CBC has eroded trust in journalism. It must be reformed. And no, not far enough. Not far enough. How about completely defunded and buried? They've defunded state media, NPR and a whole bunch of other things. Stephen Colbert got defunded because no more USAID money and all that other stuff. So there's all sorts of things that are being defunded. CBC is, do you watch anything that CBC's produced? I haven't watched the CBC in years, right? So why? It's all propaganda nonsense. And they haven't even tried to make the propaganda interesting. It's just wasteful. Like, the stories aren't compelling. It's not like, oh man, this show's great. Unfortunate that there's that transgender thing happening with the show or whatever it is, right? Or unfortunate. Remember the guy who was talking about the gay shit, right? Unfortunate there's all that happening with the show. Otherwise it might be watchable. But it's not even It's not even like, yeah, it's an okay show aside from all that. It's not even that. It's terrible. It's not even making it onto my radar. It's so bad. Or if it does make it onto my radar, it's because it's propagandizing false sex mores or something to that effect. It's promoting falsehoods that are damaging. Here is Jeffrey Rath, and he's talking about Alberta. And at the end, he's talking about a doctor, and the doctor's saying something, and I don't know what the doctor said, so I've got to find out what the doctor said. Here you go.
You know, what we are trying to do is to make a better world and a better country, specifically Alberta as a country, for our children and our grandchildren and all the future generations that come after us. Right now, and again, this Bank of Canada economist today, like every time I talk to somebody, I become more depressed or more shocked about the mess that we're being led into. He said, oh yeah, he says, you ever wonder why everything seems like it costs twice as much as it did, 5 or 10 years ago? And I said, yeah. I said, ever since COVID, it's like every time I turn around, it's like, you can't even plan a family vacation by going, wow, this was not this much money 2 years ago or 3 years ago. He said, oh yeah, what we are trying to do is to make a better world and a better country, specifically Alberta as a country, for our children and our grandchildren and all the future generations that come after us. Right now, and again, this Bank of Canada economist today, like every time I talk to somebody, I become more depressed or more shocked about the mess that we're being led into. He said, oh yeah, he says, you ever wonder why everything seems like it costs twice as much as it did, 5 or 10 years ago? And I said, yeah. I said, ever since COVID, it's like every time I turn around, it's like, you can't even plan a family vacation by going, wow, this was not this much money 2 years ago or 3 years ago. He said, oh yeah, what we are trying to...
What? He was going to explain it? He had an answer? Darn it. Gosh darn it. Doc Malik says the United Kingdom is not a representative body. It's a criminal enterprise. It poisons its own citizens with experimental mRNA injections, bypassing informed consent and censoring dissenting voices. It manufactures enemies abroad, promoting war with Russia while arming Ukraine and Israel, fueling mass slaughter in the name of foreign policy. It taxes the population into poverty, only to funnel that money into corrupt deals, globalist programs, and private enrichment. It encourages mass illegal immigration, eroding national identity, straining services, and ignoring the will of the people. It is orchestrating the controlled demolition of Britain, dismantling our industries, sabotaging our values, and stripping away our freedoms. It is signed on to the 2030 agenda without any democratic mandate, outsourcing national sovereignty to unelected global institutions. It serves transnational corporate and financial interests, not the British people. This is not incompetence. This is betrayal. This is treason. They are not leaders. They are traitors, parasites, and agents of decay. They are scum. They are evil, and they must be exposed, resisted, and held to account. And it seems all governments are doing this across the globe in lockstep. This is the real World War III, the war on humanity. We need a revolution, not more voting. I don't think that that's incorrect. Here's Nigel Farage talking about not trusting big government. I honestly think that Nigel Farage, he's being pushed as the next prime minister. I think that he's made some kind of deal. I'm very skeptical. Here's Nigel Farage.
Look how our freedoms were taken away during the pandemic.
Yeah.
I mean, not even in wartime did government restrict what we do to that degree. And now we're hearing that maybe we'll have national ID cards. I mean, I think Tony Blair wants to microchip us.
Yeah, I do.
But by the way, it'll be for our own good. It'll make us all safer. Life will be better. And I just don't trust big government. I think you and I are very similar on that. We kind of...
What do you say to the person who says, if you've done nothing wrong, you've got nothing to fear?
Yeah, and that's the classic argument that is turned out time and time again. But having a certain opinion, you can think is nothing wrong until it becomes,
Then you discuss it.
So, say you decided not to have the vaccine, and because of the vaccine passport hell we lived in for a couple of years, you were basically excluded from travelling, from living normally. The fact you didn't take the vaccine didn't mean you'd done anything wrong, yet you were still being discriminated against. So I don't buy any of these arguments. And we've always been very trusting in Britain of our governments.
So if you've not done anything wrong, you don't have anything to worry about. Works in a society of rule of law, but doesn't work in anarcho-tyranny. Because anarcho-tyranny, if you doing nothing wrong means pulling down a statue, right? Throwing paint on a Mona Lisa or something like that. Doing nothing wrong is just fine if you're violent, so long as you're violent for the right reasons, according to the government. Protesting the wrong thing, well, now you're an enemy of the state, right? If you have the wrong opinion about something, for example, vaccines, then now you're an enemy of the state. So that's not great, right? Claire says, great British energy, what a con. No wonder Labour voted against amendments to stop them buying kit made with Chinese slave labor. BBC News says, great British energy solar panels were made in China. Same thing happening here. We're buying Chinese ferries in BC and being told to buy Canadian, being told to, we can't possibly deal with the Americans because they're stealing Canadian jobs, even though we trade 70%, 75% of our goods with them, right? We're buying from China these ships. Come on, right? Can't build them in Canada. We've got to buy them from China with Chinese steel. That's wild and happening everywhere, right? At the excuse of net zero. So Italy has joined the U.S. in rejecting the WHO IHR amendments. So that's interesting as well, but out of place. It should have been the U.S. stuff. Let's talk about the Obama scandal. Here's Tulsi Gabbard talking about the Obama whole thing, about what's going on with this. And here's part of it.
Essentially making a very intentional decision to create this manufactured, politicized piece of intelligence with the objective of subverting the will of the American people, who in November of 2016 delivered a historic victory to President Trump, defeating Hillary Clinton. And President Obama and his team, their goal was to essentially not accept the decision of the American people and to use this manufactured, politicized intelligence as a means to enact what would become essentially a years-long coup against President Trump. You have gone into great detail over these years of what the effects of this document and this decision have resulted in. Obviously, a years-long Mueller investigation that cost taxpayers almost $40 million, 2 congressional impeachments, endless smears and attacks against not only President Trump, but his family. He had senior members of his team who were investigated, some arrested and jailed. We had heightened and increased tensions between the United States and Russia. The list goes on and on about the consequences of President Obama and his senior cabinet members politicizing intelligence once again, and I say these words very clearly, to enact what was essentially a years-long coup, subverting the will of the American people in that election in November. Now, you referenced...
So there's a lot more time on this. That was, okay, that's the end of that 2-minute clip, but here's Tulsi again. This is midway through an 8-minute long clip talking about this.
To reach and directed them to find and essentially create and manufacture the intelligence to support the conclusion that President Obama wanted to deliver to the American people. Once that document was drafted, the deep state kicked into gear and did what they usually do. They started leaking this classified information out to their friends at the Washington Post and others who are working hand in glove with the deep state to lay the groundwork for the assessment that they eventually released that served as the basis, once again, for this years-long coup with the goal of trying to subvert the American people's will and usurp President Trump from being able to deliver on the mandate that the American people gave to him when they chose to elect him as president of the United States.
So you had career intel people that came to a conclusion that, in fact, Russia did not interfere, that it had no impact, and they didn't like the assessment, and they have this meeting with President Obama at the time, and they make the decision, a very conscious decision, to pervert real intelligence, turn it into phony intelligence, but also simultaneously something else was happening. And James Comey, for example, was warned about the Russian disinformation dossier that was paid for by Hillary Clinton.
But they used that anyway. So it's very, very salacious what's going on. Dan says 2 years of dealing with this on a daily basis while they tried to destroy our lives. We knew what was happening, but we always kept up the fight. Thank you to Tulsi Gabbard for exposing these corrupt thugs. They must be held accountable for what they did, all of them. And Tulsi, in her July 18th Post says their goal was to usurp President Trump and subvert the will of the American people. No matter how powerful, every person involved in this conspiracy must be investigated and prosecuted to the fullest extent of the law. The integrity of our democratic republic depends on it. We're turning over all documents to the Department of Justice for criminal referral. Uh-oh, Pam Bondi's involved. So are we going to see this or no? Is it going to sit on her desk like the Epstein files? I don't know. We'll see. We'll see what happens. It seems like they're going for it. It seems like they're genuinely trying to go after the people who orchestrated this coup. Catherine says Susan Rice sent this email to herself in January 20th, 2017, documenting a White House meeting earlier that month with President Obama, FBI Director Comey, and others about Russian hacking during the 2016 election. Rice emphasized their work was to be done, quote, by the book. These records I first posted in May 2020 have taken on new significance with the declassified records released by Tulsi Gabbard. And Catherine says newly declassified records from Tulsi Gabbard are additional compelling evidence that the 2016 Russia collusion narrative was not rooted in credible intelligence reporting, but manufactured to fit a preferred political narrative. Gabbard has taken the rare and transparent step of declassifying a December 2016 draft of the President's Day Brief, or PDB. This highly classified report, which is a daily national security analysis for the president, assessed that Russians and criminal actors did not impact recent U.S. election results by conducting malicious cyber activities against election infrastructure. But after pushback from the FBI, then led by James Comey, the PDB was spiked based on new guidance. After a White House principals meeting, a new intelligence assessment was commissioned, and media leaks followed, reinforcing a new narrative that Russia intervened in the 2016 election to help Donald Trump win the presidency, rather than undermine confidence in the U.S. electoral system. And then he puts together a timeline. So, yeah, pretty interesting stuff. Donald Trump weighs in on this. Eric says, President Trump posts the quote from Tulsi Gabbard's treasonous conspiracy, brought to you by Barack Hussein Obama and his deep state officials. And Trump posts, quote, we had in President Obama and his leadership team people who did not want to accept the will of the American people in electing Donald Trump in 2016, and therefore cooked up this treasonous conspiracy to effectively launch a years-long coup against the sitting president of the United States. Can't do that. All right, not allowed to do that. We'll see what's happening. This is like after the ref's blown the whistle and he's pointing, and we're just waiting to find out what the penalty is, and he's going to the box, right? Maybe. We'll see. Clandestine says Trump finally weighs in on Tulsi and her bombshell allegations of treasonous conspiracy. Trump says Obama and his cronies are thugs, and he encourages Tulsi to keep it coming. Looks like we're actually doing this. Donald Trump says, great job by young and talented Harrison Fields on Fox News. The panel was fantastic on prosecuting Obama and the thugs who have just been unequivocally exposed on highest level election fraud. Congratulations to Tulsi Gabbard. Keep it coming. So there you go. We'll see what happens there. Here is Claire Danes confirming with Stephen Colbert that on her show Homeland, they had CIA, I think it was CIA operatives, intelligence people. And then, well, Glenn Greenwald says Claire Danes tried to explain on Colbert's show after he asked her about all the CIA and intel people she talks to for her role in Homeland, that CIA became aligned and allied with the corporate media in 2016 against Trump, and Colbert talked over her and cut her off. So here's USAID-funded Colbert talking to, well, another actress, right, about things that shouldn't be talked about on public television. And Colbert knows, but apparently Claire Danes didn't get allied themselves with Homeland. You don't say. Weird, just super weird. Here is Red Pill, and this is interesting. This is Obama related as well. It goes much deeper than you realize. Obama was a CIA asset. He was installed by the NWO to destroy America. This is why they got caught spying on President Trump, former FBI agent John D'Souza. And you can't play this video. So I don't know why you can't play this video. It doesn't matter what I do. I can't play this video. Very interesting. I wonder why I can't play the video. Wonder why. Oh, well. But apparently he's a CIA asset. Laura Loomer is talking about Obama as well. She says the Obama administration approved a contract that let Microsoft use Chinese foreign nationals to provide tech support across all U.S. federal agencies, including the Pentagon and our intel agencies. Navy whistleblower Tom Schiller joined me on Loomer Unleashed to explain how Microsoft escort team was supposed to provide oversight, but in reality it was just for show. They hired vets and reservists who barely understood PowerShell, which allowed CCP affiliate engineers to get remote access to classified information and top secret government systems. If you don't know that you don't know something, then you might be exploited by that thing you don't know. This isn't negligence, this is espionage, and it has created a massive threat to our national security. Yep. absolutely true. Here's President Trump, and he is talking about central bank digital currency, and he says he doesn't want central bank digital currency. He kind of rambles on this a little bit, though. It sounds like somebody was trying to convince him that he did want central bank digital currency, and he said, no way. Here we go.
I also remain fully committed to my pledge never to allow the creation of a central bank digital currency in America. It won't happen. My first... Thank you. And the other night, I will say, with some of the congressmen and women, they wanted that so badly. That was so important to them. I was impressed that they knew what the hell it was, to be honest with you. Please, sir, please, the central bank digital currency, well, you have to make sure, sir. And I'm saying, what do you know about that? It's amazing the knowledge that people have gained all of a sudden. We had a lot of problems with some of them. I said, we've already got it from the Fed, right, from Commerce, and from an executive order. You don't need it a fourth time. Sir, we have to get it. It's amazing. But they knew their subject, though, didn't they, huh? And we helped them out. My first week in office, I signed an executive order to ban the creation of a CBDC in the United States, and very soon I look forward to signing legislation that will codify and ban make it a permanent law, put it in permanence.
So there you go. That's one thing happening there. Here's Dinesh D'Souza, and Trump is ready to go to war over this. He says, we've just filed a powerhouse lawsuit against everyone involved in publishing the false, malicious, defamatory, fake news article in the useless rag that is the Wall Street Journal. This historic legal action is being brought against the so-called authors of this defamation, the now fully disgraced Wall Street Journal, as well as its corporate owners and affiliates with Rupert Murdoch and Robert Thomas, whatever his role is. At the top of the list, we have proudly held to account ABC and George Slapadopoulos, CBS and 60 Minutes, the fake Pulitzer Prizes, many others who deal in and push disgusting lies and even fraud to the American people. This lawsuit is filed not only on behalf of your favorite president, me, but also in order to continue standing up for all Americans who will no longer tolerate the abusive wrongdoings of the fake news media. I hope Rupert and his friends are looking forward to the many hours of depositions and testimonies they will have to provide in this case. Thank you for your attention to this matter. We will make America great again. And so he's suing Rupert Murdoch and Wall Street Journal and all of the owners and affiliates for $20 billion. $20 billion. So that'll be fun. That'll be interesting to watch. Will he get the Wall Street Journal? Will he get all of these other outlets? Who knows? I don't know. $20 billion is a lot of money. A lot of money. This is 2 hours and 26 minutes of Mike Benz breaking down Epstein, and I thought it was 13 minutes. I don't know why I thought it was 13 minutes. I think there's a cut of this being 13 minutes. So if you see the cut, I'm looking for it. I'll see if I can bring it on tomorrow's show. I haven't watched this yet, but I'm interested in watching this. Apparently, this is the best Epstein analysis by Mike Benz, and he's offering a different way to understand Jeffrey Epstein. So isn't he a Mossad agent? Like, isn't he an asset, an Israeli asset? Isn't that pretty much it? No. Here is No GPS, and they say Franken Skies, the lies in the sky exposed. Another chance to watch this excellent documentary about geoengineering from Matt Landman. And I haven't seen this yet. I don't think I've seen this. Sometimes I think I haven't seen something, and then I watch 10 minutes of it, and I'm like, oh yeah, I saw this a couple of years ago or whatever. So I've maybe seen this before, but it's another geoengineering documentary talking about what they're doing spraying in the skies, showing you history and the evolution of the tech since World War II. And I think it's very plausible that we're having all sorts of different kinds of warfare waged on us at this point in time. I mean, they know they're lying about climate change. And so they're doing something to make it plausibly believable for the masses. And that something is the tech that they developed in World War II, refined during Vietnam, and are using on us now. And yeah, I don't think I can get away from that. I think that that's absolutely true. And here's some stories. John says, I'm old enough to remember when J.D. Vance predicted that the new Syrian regime would mean the slaughter of Christians. And Josh Rogan said he was wrong because Josh interviewed the bishop of Aleppo. Now Syrian Christians are being slaughtered. And there's a specific, and I'm getting their grouping wrong, Druze, or there's a specific group of Christians who are being targeted in this region. But J.D. Vance predicted all of this. He says, as President Trump said, this is not our fight and we should stay out of it. Aside from that, opinions like below make me nervous. The last time this guy was celebrating events in Syria, we saw the mass slaughter of Christians and a refugee crisis that destabilized Europe. And so we're seeing that again, and it's not hitting mainstream media. It's not being talked about, and I'm getting the name wrong, so apologies about that. But I find it very interesting what's going on, and I think that the West importing this kind of ideology is much more dangerous than we understand. And the game being played here is much more dangerous than we understand, much more high level too. And shit's crazy, yo. That's pretty much it. We've already entered a brand new paradigm. Like 2020 was a brand new paradigm. Things broke in a way that it'll be difficult to go back, and much more probable that we persevere through and or the country breaks up, et cetera, et cetera. Like, it doesn't look like we're going to go back to billion-dollar deficits, but back to what it looked like before 2015, back to what it looked like before 2020, because too much money has been spent. There's too many things that have broken, including being broken by bad policy, and nobody even including the conservatives, are talking about rolling back these bad policies. And so instead of saving the country and rolling it back to what it was, the only way to save a semblance of the country is kind of what Alberta's doing now. And it remains to be seen if they're going to be successful or not. And so that's not a great place to be. Things are crazy, yo. And so we carry on, right? So fingers crossed that things will stop being so crazy soon, but I haven't seen a stop on the horizon yet. The train seems to be picking up speed, if anything. And that's enough of me. Thanks for watching, everybody. Thanks for your support. Have a wonderful, wonderful day.